Do not know me, hello everyone online. I'm Reverend Veronica Valles. Seriously, I'm over there dancing. The way that God shows up is so magnificent. And the way that God shows up as this community is so magnificent that just to feel that palpable presence, especially in the time when we're in the midst of so many challenges. These last several years have been just a roller coaster ride. And I stand wearing white today in honor of my mentor, Vivian Castleberry, but for all the women who came before me for my rights. I want to honor that. I want to honor this idea of freedom that is still evolving and that we're being called to consciously participate in. Now, we're not going to talk about politics today, I promise you, but I do just want to say that when we start understanding what true freedom is with consciousness, then we'll see a different picturing in the world. And so I think about, like I said a couple services ago, I love coming to Unity on Greenville because I haven't been that familiar with Scripture. Even though I grew up Catholic, but with Catholic, we had our prayers and we had our saints and all that. So I've been loving just diving deeper into the parables and looking into what Christ really taught. And the first thing that popped out to me was, if a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And he also said that there are many mansions. So the first one's Mark 3:24, and then we talks about the many mansions of the divine. He's talking about in John 14:2, consciousness. Consciousness. And what is freedom? I'm going to read Richard Rohr. It's a little bit long, but I love him so much. I don't know how I just found him at 58. He's that Franciscan priest. Because I was walking with, what is true freedom? I was walking, actually I usually shop at Central Market, but I was in Albertsons and I was looking around. I'm like, wow, how blessed are we though that there is abundant supply. And then yet I turn on the news and I notice that there is this separation that's happening. And a kingdom cannot be divided upon itself. Doesn't mean that we all have to look the same or be the same. What Jesus was talking about was the oneness of God, the unity that is God. When he talks about the many mansions, it's the individualized incarnations of God. That's all of life. Those of us who are in this human form, but all of life. And I remember just walking around going, but right now in this moment, my needs are being met, but I cannot just focus on my needs. Because true freedom belongs to each one of us in community. So let me just read this to you. It's Freedom from 2013, Richard Rohr. Jesus' notion of the kingdom is a different understanding of freedom than of most religious and secular leaders today. We think of freedom as not having to do what we don't want to do. Anybody can agree with that? Yeah, anybody ever say that? I know I have. But divine freedom is a capacity to be fully who we already are, to develop our inherent and true nature as much as possible, really wanting to do what we know we have to do. Only God can create freedom inside of us. Love can only proceed from such inner freedom. A mustard seed, yeast, and light that all develop from within are some of Jesus' central metaphors for this freedom-loving reign of God. Paul just calls it grace. For him, grace and freedom are almost the same thing. And I would add to that heaven. Freedom, grace, and heaven are the same thing. Now, secular freedom only creates individualist and private freedom, but not a society. It never gets around to the common good, which is a central principle of the gospel and Catholic social teaching, which instead demands from you and demands for others while ironically giving you all that you really need. Then you become you most deeply and truly, become a member of a family, a neighborhood, a society, and a planet. And if you're trying to go to heaven alone or on your own merits, you're preparing for a place other than heaven. So, often we get stuck in that human condition. It's all about me. And it's true. First, the work begins with my consciousness. See, when I think about true freedom, I think about what Jesus taught as far as love and law. Love, the divine presence, the allness of life that is expressing in, through, and as all of creation. It is infinite, it is omnipotent, it's omnipresent. Cannot be God and something else. Love is the presence of all of life. Law, which is that aspect of the divine that creates of itself. And love and law are always activated within us. It's when we actually use it consciously, which is what we learn here. What I've learned in my life is when we transform from the inside out, so that when I recognize that my freedom is actually the ability to stand in the truth of who I am, of who we all are, a unique expression of the divine, but living from the place of the Christ consciousness, which is love and joy and light and wisdom and understanding. And when I understand that if that's true freedom for me, that true freedom is equal for all beings, all people, everywhere. And I begin first with me, because I have to understand how I've created lack and limitation in my life, how we've been conditioned to believe in separation, how we're seeing the outpicturing of control instead of connection. When I understand that true freedom is my ability to make a choice in the moment, from that deep wisdom that can only be cultivated through spiritual practice, through our meditations and our affirmations, that when I understand that if I am free, all beings have the right to be free. If one person's in bondage, we are all in bondage. And Jesus brought to us those teachings through the parables, and also he never actually answered all the questions. I read this the other day. Like, he was asked question after question. He maybe answered 8, but then he asked 387 questions himself. Because what he's doing, he's questioning people to move through their mind to get, from the conditional aspect of thinking and to drop into that kingdom of heaven within. That until that I understand that the path to heaven is not a path that's after this life, that the kingdom of heaven is here now, that I activate it within me, and then I begin to see it, see God as all life, then the kingdom is not divided. Because I understand that Spirit uniquely incarnates as each one of us. And so we have that complexity of being spiritual beings in this human experience, where I want to stand present to a condition, but I want to actually then respond from that Christ consciousness. The only way that I am free is by tapping into that inner source of light, that inner source of love. And I must first actually work here so that I can participate in the circulation of love and light in the world. Our true freedom is based on the ability to see God in, through, and as all of life. And then also that we liberate ourselves from limitations. But Ernest Holmes says that we surrender the limited sense of life to the divine realization of wholeness and unity with Spirit. Now, how do we continue to access that in the moment when the world is so turbulent right now? When we're watching the shadows rise up, when it feels like we're surfing such deep waves and it hasn't stopped. Anybody else feel a little exhausted? Okay, I guess not just me. It's that tuning within. It's coming together in community. It's understanding that we belong to each other. Because we belong to life. And that life is God's life. That life is my life. That life is your life. And the way that we do it is in that self-realization, in that taking that moment to release all the stories and the conditions and the limitations that we have imposed upon ourselves. Think about some time in your life when, whether you stayed in a job or relationship or were afraid to move or afraid, to write that book or to step up, that you created bondage within yourself. That you allowed all the outer critics and the inner critic to stop you from living your full expression. And the only way that we can move through that is through the spiritual practice of understanding that in the allness and wholeness that I call God, that each one of us who is this incarnation, that we are authentically born. Authentically. And that your life matters. Your gifts matter. And it's necessary. See, true freedom is when we recognize that when I can let go of all those limitations, then there's no reason that I'm going to ever want to impose myself upon someone else. Because there's times that we can see that where people had this idea of freedom, but they came up here and created bondage. So there's no freedom. It's an illusion. It's not that individualistic way that Richard Rohr says. It cannot just be about me. It cannot just be about our little group. It's about seeing that all beings everywhere, by their divine nature, that inherent nature of their beingness, deserve to live a life freely, to be, that's in alignment with the highest values of that Christ consciousness. But attuning to heaven while we're here on earth is a little dance. It is a true dance. It's a moment-to-moment awareness. We're not here to be saints. And I don't call ourselves sinners either. We're here having experiences. We're here to see with eyes that see love. We're here to experience pain, but in a way that awakens us so that we then do not perpetuate it. We must speak from a place of clarity and understanding, so that when I'm in disagreement with someone, that we can meet in the moment first in love. We are in a very transformative place. Not only our country, but the world. Because at some point, humanity must awaken to that idea of the oneness that is God, and that we are not each other's enemies. Because Richard Rohr says that God, whenever you hear the mystics, they never find the fighter, they find the lover. And I'm not saying it's easy, because we are individualized expressions with our prickly particularities, but when we begin in that self-realization of like, okay, cultivation of that consciousness, I'm not all the things that they said growing up. That created fear, which is a lower vibration. Wait a minute, I am a child of God. The living God. You're a child of the living God. Everyone's a child of the living God. Look how God shows up. When I can understand that God shows up uniquely and that we must come together, which is what's arising in this cooperation in community. Because community means the unity of understanding that we are all perfect expressions, and then we come for the common good. And that's what we're being called for. True freedom, that inner freedom, is first standing in the place of like, where have I projected my pain onto you? And we're seeing that collectively. And then when anger arises, which anger is a signal, we transmute it, because love is a fierce power. Love changes everything. I always think about Jesus in the temple. He didn't come in and say, hey, can you move that table? I really don't like the money here. Did he? No, he walked in and he whoo. Now, I'm not talking that we have to whoo all the time, but he stood in that, not in my house. And so that's what we're being called to. Hey, not in my house. Not in my house. Maya Angelou used to do that. Someone would come in, they'd have disparaging comments. She goes, oh no, not in my house. And she'd ask them to leave. So what we're calling forth is love in our house. What we're calling forth is that the greater good is each one of us. What we're calling forth is that how do I recognize that the complexities that are happening is this illusion of false control and separation, and I can't participate in that, but I do need to step up in consciousness and somehow be activated in a healthy way. Because Jesus taught us, I am that I am. And we can understand that this person is coming from a place of pain. You can set boundaries. They're beautiful. You can hold space without taking it in. And you can also take a stand and add your love and your action towards that. So true freedom for me is knowing that we are each connected in community, and that we understand that when we affirm it and we declare it, that we know we deserve it and we accept it. But it begins with me. Which is why I teach children. I teach a mindfulness, but it's like, if I can plant some positive seeds here, wow, what's the world going to look like? Can you imagine where we're all just like dancing and creativity and loving and just this conscious way of being in community? And I truly in my heart believe it, and I'm not just a little dreamer, as I say, but I just really feel like what is calling us to wake up and to truly embody freedom for all and freedom for everyone in every way. So we begin with affirmations. So if you choose, do this with me. And notice how you feel. Notice if you can feel it, or notice if you're just saying it. Do I believe that? Do I believe that I'm loved? I wasn't very loving the other day to my, partner, all right? Anybody have that experience where we slip into condition? That's okay. But the beauty of this, in the moment I can go, you know what? I was operating from a false belief, or I was operating from a pattern, and I'm so grateful that in this moment I can stand and say, yes, I am love, and you are love. So we're going to do a couple affirmations, but I'm going to ask you to turn around to people and say it to them, right? So we begin with first acknowledging within yourself. So turn around if you want, or just imagine saying it to somebody there. And literally the first one's always love. Say, I am love. I am love. You are love. You are love. I am joy. I am joy. You are joy. You are joy. I am power. I am power. You are power. You are power. I am wisdom. You are wisdom. I am beauty. You are beauty. I am peace. We are peace. I am free to be. You are free to be. Now let's say, we are love. We are joy. We are peace. We are power. We are beauty. We are free to be. Take a breath. Breathe it in. Feel the palpable presence of the Christ consciousness. Every day, in every way, we are called to remember the truth. Jesus reminded us. And we remind each other. And when we see inequity, when we see violence, when we see fear and control, trying to control other people, we have to stand in. But I am love. And in that moment, knowing that I am love, I know you're love, but I think you forgot. Let me mirror to you what love really looks like. The Christ consciousness is the only place of our true inner freedom. That no matter what is happening in the world, and I think of Anne Frank, writing, holding on to her belief of the goodness of humanity in the midst of the most horrific situation. I'm like, if Anne can be free, that's the consciousness to be free. The light of the Christ that lives within each one of us is calling us to true freedom and to take a stand for all beings everywhere. And to meet those who may be in different ideas, like sit with me and tell me what is it that you feel. Because I'm called by Spirit to bring more love on this planet. And I am not, in my house, going to allow anything less than that. It will take time. It will take courage. But it's going to take our consciousness. It's going to take our consciousness. And community and unity does not mean conformity. We understand that connection is not about control. Connection is about meeting God in the moment. So true freedom is understanding that the presence of God that is love is my life, all of love. That universal law, that aspect that allows me to co-create my life through my prayers, through affirmations, through my spiritual practice, is for all of life. And that to be free in this moment, I must stand knowing the truth that everybody gets that beautiful bloom of light and love that is God. And until that day fully arrives, I stand in this truth. I live to the best of my abilities from this truth. And when I'm having that sweet human little ego moment, I take responsibility. So take a breath with me and feel within yourself that kingdom. Know that right here in your heart, that love that is God is present. That we come together in community. That we are guided by our choices to live from our deepest truth. And that right now, in this moment, when I turn on that inner light to the truth of the Christ consciousness, that the kingdom of heaven is here now, and I radiate it, I live it, and I be it to the best of my ability. And when I'm in pain, and when I'm in sorrow, or I'm feeling mad, I allow it to inform the moment, but I don't allow it to inform my choices. I transmute it through the power of love. Close your eyes if you're comfortable. Let's take a deep breath in and breathe it into that inner freedom, to that kingdom of heaven that is right here within. To that Christ consciousness, which is the allness and wholeness that is God. To love and wisdom, joy and peace, beauty and power that makes itself known right here, right now, is each life. Here in the sanctuary, here online, here as we walk the world, that we know and affirm and declare that there's only one power, and that is God. That there's only one love, and that is God. There's only one truth, and that is God. The presence of light, the presence of joy, the presence of wisdom. So on this day, as we gather together in this light of truth, we allow ourselves to be that beautiful beacon that just radiates into the world. That we see with eyes that see God, that we speak with words that are the wisdom of God, that we anchor ourselves in the truth that is God, and that while we're having this beautiful, sweet human incarnation, that we understand that to be free is to be in alignment with that Spirit of God that is the Christ consciousness. So in every moment, every choice, every breath, I allow that expansive nature of the One to reveal all that is seeking to reveal, to release all that is needing to be released, to stand true to the freedom of all beings. And when I gotta march, I march. And when I gotta speak, I speak. And when I pray every day, I pray anchored in the Christ consciousness. And I allow my human experience to then just inform my emotions that I transmute and just allow into that divine energy that truly is the only power, the one power. So I breathe in gratitude for this ability to actually be in a community where we can speak this word freely. I give gratitude for all that I do have and all that I must take a stand for not only myself, but for all beings everywhere. Because if one person is not free, we are not free. If one person is in bondage, we're all in bondage. And right now in this moment, we dissipate that, we transmute it through the power of love. Breathe it in. And in great gratitude for knowing this truth, and great gratitude for just the presence of God, and great gratitude to be able to tune within freely, that no matter what the world wants to reveal, in this moment, my true freedom, my true light, my divine nature cannot be contained by conditions. So we allow ourselves to shine in this moment brightly. We celebrate this community together because it's in connection and community that we arise in this consciousness that is Christ, and knowing that it is already so, in such gratitude for each person here, but just such gratitude for this awareness. I give thanks. And in those moments when I must forgive or forgive myself, I give thanks. And in those moments that I feel like I'm limited, I dive into that prayer of Christ consciousness and I give thanks. And take a breath. And as you exhale, let go, let God, be free to be. And so it is.